We know that the brain talks to the gut, and we know the gut talks to the brain, and we know that together they need to be in sync. Granted, my hearing's probably not the best, but no, I don't hear things.
What? Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Lunch and Life with Sharon and Robin. I'm Sharon Gelfand, one of your co-hosts, and I'm a functional lifestyle and holistic nutritionist working with women over 40 to get to the root of their most common health complaints with at-home testing and flexible food choices so they have more energy, less stress, and feel great again. And I'm here with my co-host, Robin.
Hi, I'm Robin Joy Myers, a former molecular geneticist turned fear strategist, and I help women embrace the 3 C's of life: choice, chance, and change, so that they can find their true joy. This week's episode, we are going to discuss the why.
What I love about how we're approaching this and sharing this with our audience is that it is mind and body, and why we do anything is so important. How we show up, why, because if we don't know that why behind something, then nothing ever sticks, whether it's a diet or our plans for working a new business. You know, there has to be a why that really fires us up. And it always goes back to really with the mind first of what's going on.
I think that's really great the way you put it, though, because it's how we do everything, right? So it is how we show up and what we start. And it could be, frankly, starting our day to ending our day. So it is with the mind. And it comes down to really getting to know who we are. And we were discussing earlier to catch our audience up, especially during this time where we're getting so much information of what we should do and what we shouldn't do and how the world's progressing. And it's already, 3/4 through 2020, which seems hard to believe, but how do we finish up 2020 and how do we look at 2021? And, with all the bombardment of news and media and everything else, it comes back to us being able to filter all of that and truly trust who we are and what we want to take from that. Yeah. And it comes down to that self-discovery of what we trust.
That is an important point because there's so much information, there's so much misinformation, and we don't know who to trust. And we should be trusting ourselves first, but when we have over 60,000 thoughts a day, we're making all these split decisions and not thinking, and even just you saying how this year's gone by, these months have gone by, it's like Groundhog's Day. Like going through these cycles over and over again becomes so autopilot and automatic. And it does fill our brains with thoughts that are not serving us. And then we're filling our bodies with foods that don't serve us. So why we're detoxing both is going to help us bring us back to ourselves. And that, as you just said, trust. We don't even think about that word. We're trusting, detoxing, we're using words that are so simple, but we don't give them the worth that they deserve and empowerment that we could be feeling from observing and doing something about it.
These are words that are so simple and are used so frequently, but they carry so much weight. And I think they're used almost too frequently that people don't realize the weight they carry. And I like to ask people, do you really trust yourself? And many people say to me, no, they don't. They don't trust themselves, whether it's business or decision-making, that they just never really thought about even answering that question.
But then when you post it to them and they thought about it, who did they trust? Then what were they doing?
That's just it. They never took that time to really sit with their thoughts and their own feelings, right? Because as we've discussed, even with mindset, we come into this world, even the imprints, we come into this world kind of with imprints of others and get on the hamster wheel and start doing life by others' rules without really, and societal rules without really thinking about pausing. I mean,
Yeah.
most of our life, what do? You get up as a kid, you be a kid, you start school, and you start that routine and not really ask questions because you're supposed to go through these stages of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about that last week, knowing that we actually can ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
We are raised with these belief systems that aren't ours. They're from everybody around us, including our ancestors, right? So it's so important to really be able to distinguish that trust for self. And it's almost as though I feel as though this can be a little overwhelming because you're opening up a can of worms for a lot of people here, and these questions become very thought-provoking. So how would one then continue of this why journey? Why do it?
Well, I think it comes down to patterns and behaviors, right? It all kind of filters back to our brain being as powerful as it is and kind of going against your brain and its original thoughts. So if you feel that you want to make a shift, you have to change that pattern and that wiring to create a new habit. That's not always, it's not easy. I mean, it's certainly not easy because even if you start the process, your brain is going to be like, hey, wait a second, for the last, I just turned 56 yesterday, for the last 55 years, this has been okay. Why are you trying to change this now?
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, oh my God, Robin, no, this is too much work. I don't want to.
Yeah,
I just,
you're fine.
I just don't want to do it. And that's really what happens because it's like, oh my God, are you putting something else on my plate? I have too much to do already. Now I have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Me uncomfortable.
So you got to get really comfortable being uncomfortable, and you've got to really get into understanding that when you get uncomfortable, like that pause, that 5-minute pause, and step it back. And whether it's answering someone to do something or having to go somewhere or eat something that you're not sure if you really want to go eat that, or you're not even hungry, but you're just doing it as a response because it's in front of you, like just take that pause and grab a glass of water and then decide if you were really hungry or not for it. And but it's just making you stop and then make a decision. Like in those few minutes you can decide, am I really doing this because I want to do this?
Or does somebody expect me to do it?
Yeah, well, we know that goes a long way.
We've been down that road before,
Yep.
as I'm sure have so many other people. Yeah.
Yep.
Seriously. And, they always say that change happens when you get uncomfortable, when it's just like Martin Luther King said, it's like taking that first step. You don't need to see the whole staircase, but you have to know why, like when people come to me and like, oh, I need to lose weight. You need to. Why? Where does that story come from? Or what you even were saying last week about somebody asked you how much you weigh, and you don't even own a scale. I don't either. Who told us we have to weigh ourselves? Why?
Right.
And questioning the thoughts and the patterns, the awareness, when we can become aware and ask those questions of why. We're not always going to have all the right answers, and we'll fall a little bit, we'll pick ourselves up, but it's knowing that if we're going to fall, we're going to fall forward because we're making progress.
Right. And it's understanding too that change is real and change is going to happen. And honestly, change is growth, right? So at any age, it doesn't matter if you're 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 if you make it to 100, but it doesn't matter how old you are. Change is growth. And if I stayed the same place that I was at age 20, well, I would be a very lonely, quiet person. I certainly wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now.
Oh, when I think back to my younger self and the way I was sleepwalking, I was unconscious about everything. And when I think back to if I had stayed that way, the fear of all the change that I created and that happened in my life, I couldn't imagine it now being any different. Like, because I needed it. It was like my soul was yearning to just break free.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I had stayed back, it's like I can't even imagine what my health would have looked like, what my life would have looked like, yet taking that step and having the support, because you want to trust yourself, but you want to have the support of people who have your back, because you can't do it alone.
No, it's good to have the support, even if it's one other person, but it's nice to have the support. Yeah, I can't imagine being that person. I mean, I sometimes think about situations and I'm like, I don't even think I was awake until I turned 50. Frankly, I think I just started to wake up.
You know, I remember mine was actually when I turned 40, and I just remember thinking something's wrong, something's just off. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, and I just have to do something, because I like, where did my 30s go? I was busy raising my kids. My former husband, I had a business. Like, something's got to change. And it was a little scary when I started to write, wash the window and see a little bit more of a clearing. And it was also the first time that I actually started to embrace going to therapy, where I'd never thought about that before. It's like, oh, I don't need therapy. It's only for other people, not for me, right? I had this big ego. And don't you think ego is a huge component of all of this also?
I think it is. And I think, but I think also society doesn't help with that, because I think part of it is we think that we're saying something is wrong. Where, why do you think there's therapists? They're there and they're trained to help, and there's nothing wrong with asking for help at any stage.
Yeah.
Why can't you, ask for help? And again, that's growth.
But it's the people don't ask for help because we've been trained and conditioned not to. Or at least, I feel like the way I was raised, it was like, you don't ask for help, figure it out on your own. Because,
Oh, I was totally
right, asking for help is a sign of weakness.
right. I totally was like that. Yeah. Frankly, don't talk. I mean, don't celebrate the good, because that would be a bragging moment, and certainly don't let anyone know if anything bad happened, because don't want to, break the crystal ball or something. So
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And when you can embrace that vulnerability,
mm-hmm.
and start to peel back, I like to say start to peel the layers of the artichoke, because then you get to the heart.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
it is. I also tell my clients, and I want people to be aware of, though, the more that you go on the self-discovery, and I'm curious if you have this, I still have it. I mean, there's more and more layers that come out, because the clarity really starts showing itself. You do get to the heart, but the heart has many layers in there as well. But what I like is that you start recognizing the triggers. So something that might have either you hid, or it set off this major trigger that would either shut you down or, take you back years. You realize where you're going much quicker and know how to handle it.
That is such a key point, because we all have triggers, and taking that time to recognize it so that you can take a step back and breathe and kind of let some light into it without reacting,
Mm-hmm.
shed so much information to you of how you want to respond. It's, yeah, I wouldn't change anything about it. But so getting back to this idea, right? Detoxing the mind, detoxing the body, and we're in this on this hamster wheel of doing things the way we're supposed to be doing them. For somebody, let's just bring it back to those few steps of, for the mind, for the ability to trust, just building on what we've been talking about these last couple of weeks. How do we stop and pause with the why? What are a couple of things to do so that we find our true why, so that we stick with it?
Well, again, I can't repeat enough to begin a morning routine, that 5 minutes. And, I initially had told everyone those two important questions, how do I want to feel today? And what do I need from the day? A couple of tricks to build on that would be record yourself a message. I always say we all walk around with our cell phones, and you can do this for yourself, for your kids, for everybody. I am powerful because it's a reset tool. Put it in your voice memos and you can change it. But it's a message that you hear. Affirmations are great, but unless you believe it, it's not going to do you any good. but this is a tool that it's your voice reminding you that you're going to be just fine. So I used to do it when I first started to speak, just to hear my voice being like, you've got this, you're okay. You know it, just take a deep breath and go do what you do. But recording yourself a message is great. The other thing really is know who you are by making a bullet point list of non-negotiables. It's kind of like your golden rule. What do you stand by? You know, what will you not accept? You treating yourself like your best friend, there's things that you won't accept from others that you should make sure you don't accept for yourself, right? But what is the integrity, the honesty? What is so important to you that you just won't budge on? And I think, that begins those stepping stones to say, this is my core. And it's easy to say, I have that, but sometimes you've got to get it out of your head. Very often, like head to hand to paper, getting it on paper is so important, because not only can you go back to it, but it's just an exercise where saying it doesn't always help all the way. You've got to get it out, mouth to paper.
I couldn't agree more with that. And I, even with my clients, talk about when it comes to food and health and diet, which I hate that word in the way that people use it,
Mm-hmm.
simply as food, not as a restrictive, which we had talked about, is the same thing of the thoughts that come up in our heads that we don't even realize that we're saying of, oh, I didn't accomplish anything this week. I didn't get anything done this week, or I didn't add a new food in. Okay, but what did you do?
Right.
There's something that we did do. So looking back and thinking, what have I accomplished? Or somebody who feels that they've plateaued with, let's say their goal was to lose weight and they plateaued because they have a number in their mind. It's asking, well, why is that number in my mind? Why do I feel like I have to weigh that much? What is it that's keeping me attached to that? Because a number it's very linear, and you could weigh that amount, but you may not feel great. So it's about how we feel in our clothes, in our bodies. And when we can write down the small little accomplishments, I got out a couple of days this morning to go on my bike ride. I drank more water today. I spent some time just breathing and reflecting and feeling good, as opposed to, oh, I was lazy today. I got nothing done. I cheated. Catching ourselves, and even better is as we catch ourselves, and let's say the word is lazy and I cheated, and then just making little tick marks of how many times you say that to yourself in a day, in a week.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Going back to that awareness, they're like, oh my God, wow, I'm constantly down on myself.
I agree, because when you see that, you can see the awareness. You realize how much, I'll use the term, beating yourself up. And
Yeah.
you can really see the shift that you not only need to make, that you should make, and you want to make.
Yeah. I think it's important also with the why aspects for both ends, the mind and the body, is that we waste too much time worrying about all this, right? So all of these worried thoughts that create a lot of discourse in our bodies and dis-ease in our bodies is taking up valuable time that we could be shifting and focusing on things that we want to focus on, whether it's work, career, kids, spouse, whatever it is. We waste so much time and energy overthinking and thinking these things. And if we were to remove it, and I think you do this also, like it's like if I could wave a crystal wand, magic wand, and you could have a day of anything, what would that look like and why? That
Mm-hmm.
gets you more to the root of why you'll do something, so that you can then stick with it. And again, when I say stick with it, incorporate that into your lifestyle.
I agree. And I think it's really important that people build in their time, as you get to know who you are. I think you have to build in your treat to yourself, right? And it doesn't matter money or anything. And it doesn't matter if you've got little babies at home or you're an empty nester, frankly. If you've got little tiny ones at home, you might not be able to do it on a daily basis, but maybe it's once a week, or maybe it's even once a month, that you take yourself out. And it could be that you just get to go walking in Central Park for an hour, but you plan that it's your sacred time that you're doing for you. I mean, I try and plan it more often. I don't have kids at home that I'm, physically making dinner for or doing something like that. But it's really important to give yourself those, frankly, rewards. I mean, you have to really start treating yourself with kindness.
Agreed. It's interesting because I used to feel guilty
Oh,
about
me too.
in the morning taking an hour to go exercise or do something, like, oh my god, how could I take care of myself? And like my kids aren't young, so I do have the time, and I've worked on, this isn't guilt, this is putting the oxygen mask on myself first before I can help others. So interestingly, I go to Central Park a lot, and I see a lot of young couples and families, either the father, the mother, or together with their babies in strollers, and they're jogging, they're walking, they're doing some form of exercise, and taking that time together, which is also great bonding time, right? So it's realizing you need that for your self-preservation. It's not being selfish, it's giving back to you, because if you don't fill your cup and you keep giving, there's nothing left.
There is nothing left. And at some point it builds up, right? And the resentment builds up. Something breaks along the way, and that's where you start feeling the discomfort somewhere along the line. And you have to then, I think where people get just uncomfortable, and then people want to make changes, is when they start feeling, if nothing changes, this year or next year, where will I be at, sort of thing. And I think that's when people typically come to us, right? Is where they just don't see a change happening and they need a little help along the way. But yeah, you have to really start incorporating yourself and taking care of yourself. It's not, there isn't a selfishness to it. It's just, you have to be strong for what you do. And in order to do that, you have to make sure your health, which includes your mind and your body, are healthy.
So you just reminded me of questions that I generally ask of my clients when I'm onboarding them, are, well, what is it that's, how are you feeling? Right? So it goes back to your morning question, but how long has this been going on? So when I say, how are you feeling? Like, somebody may come to me even with something as simple as IBS, right? How long has it been going on? How often does it happen? Does it interrupt with anything in your life? And then it's the pause of, same thing as a magic wand. What will your life look like 1 year, 3 years, 5 years from now if you don't do anything?
Right. I asked a similar question.
And that's a question that's great for our audience to think about. It's like, I'm still in this uncomfortable, but I'm comfortable feeling lousy physically, mentally.
Right. You're dealing with it.
I'm dealing with it, right? How long do I want to deal with it for? Because eventually I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to pay for it either with a healthcare professional, with medicine, with something that's going to break my body down. So if I have a choice, why not be the optimist and be proactive with it, instead of waiting and being reactive and then wishing that you had done something?
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. Wow, this has been very eye-opening in terms of the different viewpoints of how we can look at why we should be detoxing both the brain, the mind, and the body.
Why is a nice big question. 3 little letters that are huge.
Yeah. And it's one that we don't spend enough time doing and reflecting, really reflecting.
I agree.
Yeah. So any last tips?
I think in closing, I would just say, the answer to why is because you're worth it. That's what I would like the audience to know. You deserve to feel fulfilled and happy, and you have the ability to make that choice. As I said, I think in the intro, choice, chance, and change. those are three C's, and you do have that ability to make that choice. And even though that choice might seem like it's a little uncomfortable at the beginning, it's well worth it when you do make it.
Robin, that was a great way to end the segment. And I love that it's you, we all have a choice. So thanks for helping unpack lunch. I always enjoy having lunch with you. And until next week, have a great day, everybody.
Take care.